The hegemony's third expeditionary fleet had conquered 47 worlds in the span of 3 cycles. Each victory followed the same precise pattern: overwhelming orbital bombardment, systematic ground invasion, complete subjugation. The neural networks of 1,000 conquered species had been catalogued, their collective knowledge absorbed into the vast databases of the Kethvar Empire. Admiral Zexthul gazed through the reinforced viewports of his flagship, the Inevitable Dawn, at the small blue-green planet rotating lazily below, the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star, designated as Target Designation 7749C by Imperial cartographers. Intelligence reports suggested a primitive civilization, barely capable of nuclear fission, utterly incapable of faster-than-light travel. Their largest weapons were crude chemical explosives. Their military consisted of scattered tribes fighting with projectile weapons. "A waste of good plasma charges," muttered his tactical officer Veltar, mandibles clicking in amusement. "These humans won't even require a full bombardment sequence." Zexthul's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he reviewed the tactical display. 200 ships hung in perfect formation above the planet, enough firepower to crack continents. The humans possessed perhaps 50,000 primitive aircraft and a few hundred ocean-bound vessels. The mathematical certainty of victory was so absolute, it bordered on tedium. "Begin standard pacification protocol," he ordered, settling into his command throne. "Target their major population centers first, military installations second. We'll have their surrender within 1 solar rotation." The first wave of plasma bombardment lanced down from orbit like spears of green fire. 12 major cities simply ceased to exist, replaced by glowing craters that would remain radioactive for centuries. The Admiral expected the immediate surrender, transmission that always followed such displays of power. Instead, his communications officer's chitinous faceplates flushed pale. "Admiral, we're receiving responses from the surface." "Surrender terms already? These humans learn quickly." "No, sir, they're firing back." Zexthul's primary arms tensed. "Impossible. Our intelligence confirmed they lack orbital strike capability." The tactical display suddenly erupted in angry red warnings. Primitive chemical rockets were climbing from the planet's surface, hundreds of them, then thousands. Most would burn up in atmosphere or fall short, but their sheer number suggested something the Imperial intelligence apparatus had never encountered. A species that responded to overwhelming force not with submission, but with desperate fury. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice cracked with disbelief. "I'm reading massive energy signatures across all continents. They're detonating their own nuclear stockpiles, not at us, at themselves." Through the enhanced optics, Zexthul watched mushroom clouds bloom across the planet's surface like deadly flowers. But these weren't random acts of destruction. The explosions followed precise patterns, creating massive electromagnetic pulses that swept across continents. Every Imperial surveillance drone, every targeting satellite, every communication relay in low orbit began failing simultaneously. "They're blinding us," Veltar whispered, "but they're also irradiating their own world." The second phase of humanity's response was even more disturbing. Underground installations that hadn't appeared on any reconnaissance scan suddenly revealed themselves, launching crude but effective kinetic bombardment systems. Railroad tracks built across entire continents accelerated massive tungsten rods to orbital velocities. Particle accelerators, disguised as scientific installations, fired concentrated beams of radiation that could penetrate even Kethvar armor. Most terrifying of all were the launches from the planet's polar regions. Massive chemical boosters lifted payloads that intelligence had dismissed as weather satellites and communications equipment. These payloads deployed in orbit and revealed their true nature: crude but functional mass drivers, throwing chunks of asteroidal metal at the Imperial fleet with devastating accuracy. "Admiral," the damage control officer's voice was tight, with panic. "We've lost 17 ships. The Dominator and Conquest Edge are reporting critical hull breaches." Zexthul's tactical mind, honed by 100 battles, finally grasped what he was facing. The humans hadn't been caught unprepared. They had been waiting. Every primitive installation had been a carefully disguised weapon system. Every civilian launch had been a military operation. They had sacrificed their own planet's habitability to deny the Kethvar Empire its prize. But the most chilling realization came when his xenobiologist transmitted her analysis from the surface readings. Sir, the radiation signatures suggest they didn't just detonate their nuclear weapons randomly. They've created a planetary-wide dirty bomb. Anyone who lands on this world, including our ground forces, will die within days from radiation poisoning. They've made their own planet uninhabitable rather than let us claim it. The display showed the third wave of human response. Every major city that still existed was launching everything they had. Civilian aircraft loaded with explosives, cargo vessels accelerated to ramming speed, even modified passenger rockets aimed directly at the fleet. The humans were throwing their entire civilization at the invaders in one final suicidal assault. Sir, Veltar's voice was barely a whisper. Our casualties are approaching 30%. These primitives they're actually winning. Admiral Zexthul stared at the burning world below, watching continents disappear under clouds of radioactive ash. In 47 conquests, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't just fighting, they were turning their entire world into a weapon, destroying everything they had ever built rather than surrender it to invaders. The final transmission from the planet's surface came through the static and radiation interference. A single human voice, calm and clear despite the apocalypse raging around the speaker. This is Earth Defense Command. We know you're listening. We know you've conquered other worlds. Here's what you need to understand. Humans don't surrender, we don't submit, we don't become your slaves. If you want our world, you can have the radioactive corpse we're leaving behind. If you want our people, you can search through the ash, but you will never ever have us. The transmission cut to static. Zexthul gave the order to withdraw. For the first time in Imperial history, the hegemony's fleet retreated from a primitive world. As they jumped to hyperspace, the Admiral's last sight was of a planet wrapped in nuclear fire, its surface turning to glass and ash. In the Imperial archives, target designation 7749C was reclassified. The file now bore a single notation in the ancient Kethvar script. Avoid. Species exhibits terminal adaptive aggression. Planet unsuitable for colonization due to indigenous scorched earth protocols. The humans had lost their world, but in doing so, they had won something far more valuable. The knowledge that some species would rather die free than live as slaves. The fleet entered orbit expecting easy conquest. Instead, they found only ash and the terrible understanding that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was the absolute refusal to surrender.